Hey there everybody, Eric from Outer Limitless coming at you today with another video. Now today's video is going to be pretty straightforward. This is a backpacking gear loadout video. This is an update to videos that I've done in the past, showing some of the updates on my gear and what I'm doing to ultimately refine my kit. Now my current kit is based upon the Granite gear Crown 260. I have yet to carry this out into the field and I'm very much looking forward to it. Now, I have actually used it for small little day trips, but I've never gone backpacking with it, so it's a great opportunity for me to see how this carries, what it's capable of doing for me, how much gear I can fit in here, and how it ultimately fits, and how comfortable it is on my back. It is still technically winter, but we've had some pretty nice days, so I'm not exactly sure what to expect. Now, my trip that I'm going on in the near future is heading up into the mountains, and I know it's still going to be pretty much a winter hike. So I'm preparing for that when I'm going through my gear, so just keep that in mind. Now, ultimately, I'm trying to go with a reasonably lightweight kit, but there are some things that I need because it is going to be a winter hike. So I'm going a little bit above and beyond what I think I might need just to have a little bit of redundancy. And even at that, I do have a few extra luxury items to help me be a little bit more comfortable on my trip. So if you're interested in checking out my backpacking gear loadout update, do me a favor. Stay tuned. Now before we get too far into the details, something to cover is this pack right now does not have food or water. So those are the two things missing here. But I have everything else, including my full sleep system, my shelter, all of my clothing, and everything from my tools and even fuel and cooking. So everything is in the pack. So let's weigh this up real quick to get an understanding of where I'm at weight-wise. So hopping on the scale here with the pack on my back. Total weight here ringing in at 213 pounds. And now me alone without the pack, $183. So that rings this pack in at exactly 30 pounds, which obviously is not really ultimately light. But again, keeping in mind, I do have winter gear, a little redundancy, and also some luxury items. Now, as I mentioned, this kit is built upon the Granite gear Crown 260. This is a lightweight bag. This is a 60-liter bag, which is a little smaller than what I'm used to carrying. I have been carrying the Osprey Atmos, which has a 65-liter capacity, so just a touch smaller, but this really feels smaller. It does not necessarily have the overall capacity. A little less in the way of straps and features, less cinching, a much lighter fabric, and a little bit of a tighter bag. So ultimately, even though the two bags are in a similar class or size range, ultimately this Crown 260 is quite smaller than my Atmos. And the first thing I find that's going to be a little bit of a struggle is where to carry my food. So again, keeping in mind that I do not necessarily have water or food in this bag. At this point, I've consumed a lot of my volume, and I have just a couple of places left to put my food, which is okay. I just need to be a little bit creative. So the first thing is I do still have a good amount of space on the outside of this pack. So if I loosen up these straps here, I can get my hand in here, and there is plenty of room inside this mesh. So I should be able to get some of my food here on the outside of the bag where it's easy to access. And the other place where I have a decent amount of space is up in this head pack. So I do have on the outside of the bag a couple of good areas where I can access my food, and that should work overall pretty well. Now on this upcoming trip, I am planning on going to an area with plenty of water, so I'm not concerned with carrying volume at this point. So really all I have here on the side of my pack is a 1-liter Vargo Titanium Bot. I have been using this in the past for a couple of hikes now to carry my water, and it's been excellent. This does have a gasketed lid, which is nice. It's a good overall size. Granted, it's only 1 liter of water, but I feel as though that's enough given the volume of water I'm going to come across on my trip. Now, continuing around the outside of my pack, here you'll see that I did managed to get a saw with me. Now this is my Silky saw, Gomtaro, which unfortunately had a disastrous sheath destruction. Had a pretty bad accident and it did not survive. So at this point I've kind of half-assed it and made one out of cardboard. Now if I have time before my trip, I'm actually contemplating trying to make one out of Kydex, but in a pinch, if I had to, I'm just going to make this little cardboard sheath work. Now because this pack was tight, I found as though I had a hard time fitting my fuel canister. Now given that this is a huge propane tank, I am planning on downsizing this and getting a smaller can of gas. This is the only one I had and I wanted to weigh my bag with fuel in it. So even though this is larger and heavier than what I'm intending on carrying, I did want to go through the practice of having this in my bag just for this demonstration and to get a little bit of weight in my pack. Now continuing on the outside of the bag, in these pockets on the side, these are a nice elasticized pocket. They are a very ample size, so a good amount of storage on the outside and sides of the bag, and they do have these cinch straps to help you to keep the load in place. And I just simply have a pair of gloves stuffed in here, which I know I'm going to need to get to quickly, so I have them on the outside of the bag. And also what I have here are a couple of tools, so a tool, a utility item, and a little bit of a luxury item. Getting into this here, I am planning on bringing a hatchet or an axe. For this particular case, I'm thinking I'm going to bring this Tarp's Grandpa's axe. I recently did a review on this, and it's a cool little tool. Now, I haven't settled all my thoughts about this in my mind, and I have a little bit more I want to do to kind of make up my mind, and I figured I'd bring this with me. Now while I'm at it talking about tools, you saw I'm planning on bringing a saw. I am planning on bringing this little hatchet. And what about a knife? Well, I had always thought that this Grandpa's axe would be an excellent partner for this Tarp's Viper Scout. Now I have not done a review and I've barely used this to this point, but I thought this would make an excellent overall backpacking knife, and I'm really excited to give this a try. So ultimately, if it's a dry weather condition, I plan on bringing this knife, but if it's a wet weather condition, I do not want the carbon steel and leather combination, even though I am going to have to deal with it with a hatchet, but that's okay. So what I thought is, if it is a wet weather condition or a little bit, I'd say, damper than I had hoped, what I'll probably do is take this Jaktkit Knv2, which is a stainless steel with a Kydex sheath, so a little less maintenance and a little less prone to rust. So as I mentioned, I do have some luxury items in here, and one of the items that I've been wanting to bring on a hike with me for a long time is this Walkstool. Now this is the basic model. I know a lot of people recommend the Walkstool Comfort. I was really trying to go minimalistic. I think I made a little bit of a mistake. If I could do it again, I'd probably go with the Walkstool Comfort simply for the build quality. This is a little bit on the cheap side, and in my opinion, probably worth a little extra money and a little extra weight to get the overall quality. But with that said, I did want a place to be able to sit down. Again, it's going to be winter, and I'm expecting there to be snow and moisture on the ground. And even if there's not snow, I know it's going to be quite damp from the snow melt. So having a place to put my butt at the end of the day is something I'm really going to enjoy. And finally, on the outside here, I do have a small tarp. This is essentially just a ground sheet. I like to keep my ground sheet on the outside of the pack because it's the first thing I go to grab when I get to my campsite. The last thing I want to do is take my pack and put it down in the dirt or the mud. So the first thing I'll grab is the ground sheet out of my pack. I'll lay it down, and that way when I take my pack off, I can put it down on the ground in a good dry spot where it's not going to get dirty and muddy. Then beyond that, I do actually intend on using a hammock for this particular trip, and in that case I need a place to put the bulk of my stuff overnight. So I will put this beneath my hammock, and it gives me a good quality place to put a bulk of my gear, and I can take this tarp and I can tie it all up and keep everything nice and dry and protected while I'm asleep at night. So then back on the other side where I had my Vargo Titanium Bot, the last thing I have down here is the essentials. Just a little bit of TP in case I gotta go. But for the most part, that takes care of the outside of the pack. Again, keeping in mind, I am going to try to find some spaces to stuff some of my food when I get it prepared. And that leaves me at that point with the head pack. So if you look at the head pack here, it is a pretty simple design. I've added a couple of straps here in case I decide to take a jacket off or something like that, so I can lash it on the outside of the pack. So between that and the external straps, it just really gives me a pretty good place to tie some stuff down if I have to. Now continuing into the head pack, Here you'll see just a couple of basics. And I do have a charger for my phone and camera if I need it. Now this is way bigger than I need for backpacking. This to me is a good opportunity for an upgrade in the future. So I'm paying attention to this, and this is a good spot where I could certainly lose some bulk and lose some pounds. Really, I only need 1, maybe 2 charges out of this thing, and this is more than capable of doing that. So this is, again, in my opinion, a great place where I can lose some weight. And just a cable to go with that pretty much serves my purpose. A headlamp, and this is basically a small hydropack seeker. This is a small water bladder, so in the event that I come across a good water source and I want to filter more than just that 1 liter, I do have this on the outside of my pack at my disposal. Other than that, nothing in here, and I am intending on carrying some of my food, so again, some good external pocket location where I can put some of my grub if I need it. So now diving into the meat of the bag, as I unclip the head pack here, I do have a pair of snow pants here. So minimal thermal properties here. They're not overly sized, but I did want to have at least a waterproof outer layer with just a little bit of insulation and a little bit of windproof if I need it. You know, I thought this was something that would be helpful. Does it add some weight? Yeah, of course it does. Actually, a couple of pounds. These are reasonably heavy. They are certainly not lightweight, but if I didn't have these, I know I'd want them, and chances are I will probably be wearing them. Now, one of the great features of this Crown 260 is the fact that it is a roll top bag. So ultimately, it's essentially a dry bag, and that's a great feature. That's one of the things that I very much like about this Crown 260. I think that's an excellent feature and kind of reduces the amount of dry bags you really need for your gear, because pretty much in essence this is one anyway. So ultimately I do find that I use a mix of different types of little sacks and things. I've kind of compartmentalize this just a little bit. I'm trying to get away from compartmentalizing my gear in general, pretty much because every little stuff sack adds weight. However, in a wintertime application for me, it's actually a little easier for the management of the gear, where I don't want it to get in the snow. I don't want it to fall in the snow, and if it does, at least it's contained. And so I have kind of taken that mentality here and more or less compartmentalized most of my gear. Now, the first thing I'll take out of my bag, you see here this mesh stuff sack. This is my sleep system. I have opted to bring my DD jungle hammock and pretty much strip this down to everything except for the jungle. Now, what do I mean by that? Now, the jungle hammock does have a canopy system and a mosquito net, neither of which I will need for this trip. So I have stripped those out. I've reduced the weight by getting rid of the overall canopy. I got rid of the poles, got rid of that mosquito net, and ultimately saved myself pretty much a couple of pounds. So if you look here and I weigh these up, overall, you'll see that I have saved myself over 2 pounds by reducing my weight down to simply just the hammock, and this is going to work out pretty well for me. So ultimately, nice and compact, lightweight, and I already know it's definitely comfortable. Moving forward here, you'll see this small sack inside here. Simple enough. Pretty much I have myself a couple of good quality winter items. So I have a pair of mittens for nighttime when I go to bed, and also a pair of slippers. So again, granted, these don't necessarily have to go in their own compartment, but I know as I'm digging through the snow and working through these areas and pulling things out of my pack, chances are this may fall on the ground, and the last thing I want is moisture on the things I'm going to be sleeping with. So that brings me to my next stuff sack, which in here, this is basically a small dry bag. You will see that I have both a pair of Kuiu down pants and also a little deeper in here, my Rab down jacket. So again, some late night sort of as I go to bed types of things. I'm not sure exactly what weather I'm going to come across, and the last thing I want is to be cold. So I find I tend to bring a couple extra down items just in case I need them, and in this case, where they are down, I have them in their own dedicated dry bag. Now, continuing on, the next thing I have here is basically all of my change out of clothes. So in here I have another pair of pants, I have a short sleeve and a long sleeve polyester shirt, 2 pairs of socks, an extra pair of underwear, I have a pair of long underwear, and at that pretty much wraps up what I have to change into for the next day. And one last item that may come into play if I need them, some nice heavy thermal socks. So again, just nighttime, I know it's going to be cold. I have my down slippers and my thermal socks, and that's going to help keep my feet nice and toasty. Continuing on, I have 1, 2, 3 camp pillows. Now, I have done a quick video on my philosophy on camp pillows. If you haven't seen it, take a quick look. But in essence, I like to have a pillow for my head and 2 pillows to put under my knees. I think that makes a huge difference when you're in a hammock and ultimately adds a good amount of comfort when you're trying to sleep in a hammock at night. Again, is it a little bit of luxury? Sure. But I'll take a little bit of weight and a little bit of bulk to get that added comfort. In this bag here, pretty straightforward. Here I have my water filter. Now ultimately, if I was to pack a little bit more careful, I think what I would do is put this on the outside of my bag if I could. Now again, I am very tight on space, and this is the Survivor Filter Pro, which is a pretty large size. I am strongly considering trying to go with a Sawyer Squeeze. I do not own one. The people I'm going with do. So it's nice to have sometimes 2 different filtering systems just in case. And if one has a problem, at least you have a backup. So I'm a little up in the air about what I'm going to do with this, but if this is the filter I'm going with, it is the Survivor Filter Pro. Here I have my first aid kit. It's reasonably comprehensive. It's certainly not totally complete, but I have some bug spray in case it's a warm day and the bugs are starting to come out. I'm thinking that they may start to. I'm not too sure yet. It's getting to that questionable time of year. My toothbrush and toothpaste, some hand sanitizer, and a full array of medicines and different bandages and things like that. So all in their own dedicated dry bag. Again, just trying to think ahead and keep this stuff so it doesn't get any moisture or dampness on it. I always like to bring a small pouch with different bandanas and some cloth. I think that's useful. The bandana is certainly to help keep my sweat from pouring down in my face while I'm hiking. You can also use these as a crude filter. I suggest you don't use the one you used on your head as the crude filter, but you know what I'm saying. But also just a nice piece of cloth, which is definitely useful. It's good to maybe wash up at the end of the day if you want to kind of wash up a little bit. You can use this to wash your pans if you want to. There's a whole number of reasons why having a nice piece of cloth is definitely helpful, and I always try to bring one with me. Now for my cook system, I'm opting to bring a single pot from Jaktkit Titanium. I've been using these for a little while now, and I'm getting to be quite happy with them. They've performed excellent. At first I thought they were just a little bit cheap, but I take it all back. They've been quite nice. So pretty simple, basically a pot with a cover. So just the cover, which if I wanted to fry something up I could, or it certainly is a quality lid where I'm boiling water. And then here you'll see my Olicamp Kinetic Titanium Stove, which I will pair up with either that propane tank, or if I get a more appropriate fuel canister, this will go with that. And then finally just the pot itself, which this is a 1.2 liter pot, so plenty of water that I can boil up if I need to. Gives me the ability to cook if I want, or even make coffee in the morning. So good quality all around tool, but you definitely have to have yourself a good pot when you're camping. Now with that said, I did always have the concept in my mind that if I wanted to, I could dedicate myself to only carrying the Vargo Titanium Bot. You know, I thought overall where this is 1 liter, yeah, this is 1.2. They're pretty much essentially the same size. I mean, you get a little more volume out of here, but you get versatility out of the Titanium Bot. So what I was thinking is I would use this for drinking water on the way into camp, and then when I got to my camp, ultimately I could filter water into that bag and ultimately have that hydration bladder sitting off to the side full of water, and then convert this to my cooking tool so that really I wouldn't have to carry 2 pots. But I haven't had the time to really test that out. I haven't really committed to it. So at this point I do have a little bit of redundancy here, but it is for a good reason. Now speaking of titanium, here I have a cheap little Solo Man cup. I've used this for a few trips now and it has been quite nice. A simple little titanium cup. It's pretty cheap all things considered. It's probably really low grade titanium, but who cares? It's good and durable, it's strong, and this thing kind of gets crushed in the bag, so it's never lost its form, and ultimately it gives me something I can drink out of. Now continuing on, this is my DD hammock. Superlight tarp. I always like to have a tarp over my head. Now in different situations, even if there's not going to be any moisture, I do tend to like to have a tarp over my head. I don't know what it is, just like a little bit of security, the idea that maybe little things are falling through the night and could potentially fall on you, little branches, sticks, things like that. I mean, I don't want to necessarily damage my tarp, but I've never had it happen. And like I said, I just wanted to have a nice tarp in case I need it, and I'd rather kind of have it and not need it than need it and not have it. So I opted to bring my smallest, most compact, and lightest weight tarp. This is the one that for me is really all of that. So again, the smallest package, the sort of lightest materials, and really for me, kind of the best lightweight option. So not the most coverage that I have, but certainly suitable. And this to me really is my go-to tarp. Now when I sleep, I definitely like to have a mattress pad. When it comes to sleeping in a hammock, I have a couple of philosophies. Now if it's nice time and it's summer, I really don't need to have the pad. Sometimes I do like it if I'm sort of going on a long hike and I think I'm going to be really sore and I just want that little bit of comfort, but I generally won't bring it. I'll typically rely on those couple of pillows for beneath my knees and then one behind my head. However, in this particular case, where again, this is a winter hike for me, I know it's going to be cold, I want a little bit of extra protection, having this pad beneath me to break the wind and also have a little bit of thermal value comes to me really at a premium price, but it's worth carrying it. So a little bit of bulk and a little bit of weight. I add a little over a pound to my kit, which I'm not thrilled about, but I also understand it, so I'm okay with it. Now, the good thing is I know moving forward into the summertime and when things are turning the corner, getting a little bit nicer, and I'm not going to need this, this is weight that will come pretty much right out of my pack. So you can start to see some of the items that I have with me where I am going to lose some of those pounds and hopefully get this entire thing down to the low 20s in terms of the pounds. So ultimately, this is, again, a little bit of a luxury item, but again, even a little bit of safety where I know it's going to help keep me warm. Now here I have my sleeping bag. In this trip I am opting to use my 2Go Systems Shift Quilt. I have used this in the field one other time. Unfortunately, I had a little bit of a mishap and I wasn't able to give this a good quality field test and review. So I'm bringing this with me this time, hoping to get a good quality review of this product. Now this has been in my bag for a little bit. I have not crushed it all the way down. I could get a little more bulk out of here, but I don't often like to really super hyper crush my stuff. Rather, I like to find a size that's conducive to really filling a volume in an efficient manner. Sometimes I find if you crush down everything and it gets all kind of weird on you, it makes these odd shapes and is actually harder to pack even though it's smaller. So in this particular case, I found a good quality size where this is going to fit nicely. Now, I do also tend to like sort of the crush and stuff method. I really prefer not to put my sleeping bags, and in this case the quilt, in a stuff sack. But again, using that philosophy of it's wintertime, there's going to be snow, and I don't want this to get wet when I'm going through the rest of the contents in my bag. Now, two more quick items. This is the 2Go Systems Trifecta. Now this for me, I'm going to essentially use as an underquilt, where I'm using the Shift Quilt as my primary sleeping bag and warmth in my sleep system. I did want something on the outside of my hammock to potentially create a wind barrier. So I am going to attempt to use this as an underquilt. Now if that does not work and I'm struggling to figure it out or get it really fit the way I want, what I figured I could do is turn this into essentially a bivy sack so that I'm able to really slide into it and have that one extra layer and wind barrier if I need it. So again, adding a little bit of extra weight, a little more than a pound, but at the same time, even though I'm picking up a little bit of volume and a little bit of weight, I think it's worth having it for a little bit of safety in that sort of security blanket. Here, just some cordage and some stakes. Again, just cordage and stakes so that I can manage my tarp, some extra cordage in case I need to satchel something down or tie something to the back of my pack, and it's just a good quality item in case you have an emergency and need to tie things together. And then my tie downs and all the things I need to run my ridge line. So ultimately, just a good number of little utility items here, but essentially tie downs, stakes, and some cordage. And last but not least, maybe the least exciting thing I have in here, ba-ba, couple of little plates from Fossils. I've used these for a few years now. I picked these up after watching a quick little review from Syntax. He had this idea of using these Fossils products, and they're excellent. I highly recommend these. They're extremely lightweight, extremely thin, and actually pretty darn useful. So for eating your food, or even if you had to scoop things up, it actually works out pretty well. And so I usually carry a couple of these, and it really doesn't add too much in the way of bulk or weight to my pack. So alright guys, there you have it. A real quick look at my late winter, early spring backpacking gear loadout update. Now if you've been watching my channel for a while now, you've kind of seen my progression. Now I'm making a good hard effort to try to lose weight where I can, but you can tell I'm still not ready to lose some of those luxury items. You know, for me, it's really one of those things. I'm trying to strike a balance between getting lighter weight so I can really enjoy my hike, but still having some of the things that allow me to enjoy my camping experience. So I'm right in the middle there. Now I do see some areas where I can improve and continue to lose just a few pounds and still have some of the luxury items. And I can also see in this kit where once I turn the corner into some better weather, I'm really going to get the advantage and really start to lose some pounds. So at this point, I'm feeling pretty good about my kit. I'm starting to get refined, but I know I still got some work to do. So alright guys, thanks for stopping by. I hope you like what you saw. I hope you found it a little bit informative. If you like what you saw, please like, share, and subscribe. And as always, thanks for stopping by. Take care now. I'll see you soon.